Hi, welcome to the Points of Interest, Kaiser's Points of Interest Oral History Project. I'm Chris Adams, and today I have with me Alice Jones, who's a longtime resident of Kaiser and was also instrumental in McNary High School's choir program. And we are so delighted to have her here today. Mrs. Jones, thank you for coming and visiting
Very
with
welcome.
us. We're just going to ask you some questions. We want to get your take on Kaiser, and I know that you have been here quite a long time. Can you tell me when your family first moved to Kaiser?
My grandparents moved to Kaiser. They came down from Canada and had a residence down on River Road. In fact, it was the big residence that was finally moved out of the way so they could build the Lutheran church, and they moved it out to this big triangle, which is out by Kaiser Station, and the big house sat there for a number of years.
Oh my gosh,
And
okay.
that was the house that my grandparents lived in when it was down on River Road.
Oh, okay.
And their best friends were the Evanses, who lived in the house that is now the is it Mom and Me coffee shop?
Oh, sure,
And that house
sure.
is still there, and that's
Yeah.
still the same.
Oh my gosh.
But my mother and father lived in Hood River for a while, and then came back down to Salem and worked. My father was working on building a sawmill, and finally got one started. It was down in South Salem, however. And we were there for a number of years, but he felt that he was too close to town. And at that time, he was out of town, but he felt it was too close. And so he moved out to Kaiser and built his mill out there. And my folks moved out there, I believe, in 1940.
Wow, okay.
And I was 13 years old, and I had gone to school in the South Salem area. I had gone to Leslie Junior High and the old U Park School, which was torn down and was replaced by Bush. And so I was in the 6th grade in Bush School.
Okay.
And so I had gone to Leslie Junior High, and I had just graduated from the 9th grade. And I started high school, and I was 13 years old when I started high school. And I graduated from high school when I was 16,
Oh my
went to
gosh.
Willamette University and went there 4 years and graduated when I was 20, and then I started my teaching career.
And where did you start your teaching career?
I started in Yakima, Washington, and I was originally put in an elementary school to teach music there, which wasn't really up my style particularly, but I got along okay. And I had wanted to have the job at the junior high. That's what I had applied for. And the superintendent said, well, he had a lady who had a lot more experience than I had, which I had none at that time, and so he was going to give her the job. At Christmas time, or I should say at New Year's, when I came back from vacation, the superintendent was sitting there in the principal's office at the elementary school, and I thought, oh dear, here I go.
Oh no.
And he said, I need to have you come with me and come up to the junior high school. I want you to teach up there. And I said, oh, well, what happened? Well, the lady who was there that had all the experience got in the habit of swearing at the kids and telling them how horrible they were. And he said, I couldn't have that. So he said, you're going to go up there. And I did, and I loved it. And the kids
great.
were just great. I loved them. And I would have gone back, except that summer I was getting married.
Oh,
So
okay.
I got married, and we came down, and I worked in Woodburn for 2 years, teaching in the high school there, teaching music. And then my husband finally graduated from Willamette then, because he was a returning soldier, of course, and had to
Okay.
start kind of back in the beginning a little bit.
Yeah.
And he couldn't find a teaching job. That was a bad year for jobs. I don't know particularly why, but he finally got a job with the Oregon State Police. And we were sent down to Oregon, Lakeview, Oregon, and he was there for a year. And then my mother wrote a letter and said that my father was doing poorly and he needed help in the mill, and could he come home. So my husband gave up his state trooper job, and we came up here. And he worked with my dad for a while. And then the timber ran out. My father was what they called a gyppo logger, because he would go around to like farmhouses and out in the country where they would have a small stand of trees, and he would buy that from them. Well, now those got harder and harder to find, so he decided he would retire. And my husband said, well, now what shall I do? And I said, well, you've got your teaching certificate. Why don't you go and try again? So he said, all right, I will. And he went to the assistant superintendent, who was Art Myers, and my aunt had taught for him and thought highly of him, and she said, you need to hire this man. And so he said, well, what do you have in elementary? And my husband said, well, I'm a secondary teacher. He said, well, you go over to Monmouth for a couple of terms and pick up some elementary classes, and he says, I'll give you a job. So that's exactly what happened. He went over there, and he came back and had a job, started out at Auburn, and taught there for, I don't know, 4 years maybe. And then they built Walker. And he decided he would like to go to Walker because he wanted to be the baseball coach. So he went to Walker.
Gotcha.
And he stayed at Walker until such time as McNary opened, and because McNary was sharing its building with Whitaker.
I remember those days.
Yeah, and in fact, my daughter started Whitaker there in the building at McNary, and she went for 3 years, and then she went to McNary, so she was in the building for 6 years.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was good. But from then on, we built a house up in Willard Park later on because our little house was just too teeny tiny for us. And I began to teach then, and after my son was born, I waited until he was 1.5 years old. And my mother, of course, lived just down the road, and she said she'd be glad to care for him in the daytime. So I got a job, and I taught out at Judson Junior High for 5 years. And I knew they were planning a new high school, and I knew who was going to be the principal. He was an old friend, and I called and I said, have you chosen your choir director yet? And he says, yes, I have. I said, oh, may I ask who it is? And he says, yes, you may. It's you.
Oh, that's great.
So that went along pretty well. So when I had a chance to start planning it and planning my department, I asked to go over to North High because that's where he was an assistant principal. And so I taught at North High for 2 years. There only was supposed to be one, but we had the big flood and the washed out everything in the.
What year was that?
That was in 1964. We were supposed to open in 1964, but we had the flood
Right.
and it just wiped us out.
Yep.
So we had to wait until 65 to open, and that's when I came out here.
Well, that's great. So you started at McNary
Started at
McNary in 65?
yes, I helped open the building.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm one of
okay.
the original
You're one
teachers
of-
there.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
So when you think of like school teaching, or even when you were a child, what were some of the favorite things that you can remember about being in school when you were
Well, I like
young?
to read from the time, because my mother taught me to read when I was 3. And I always was reading things that far beyond my comprehension, some of them were, because mother didn't have any books except ones that she had gotten from my grandmother, and they were obviously dated.
Oh, gosh,
Not
okay.
written for younger kids, but I read them anyway because it was something to do. And I enjoyed that very much. I enjoyed riding my bike.
Oh, fun.
And because when we moved out to Kaiser, we moved out in April, and I didn't want to leave Leslie until the end of the year, so I had to ride my bike back from Kaiser clear out to
Oh, my gosh,
Leslie.
Leslie, that's quite a jaunt.
Quite a jaunt.
Oh, my
It was good
gosh.
for me.
What did you, I always think back, like how we dressed when we were in school. What was your dress like in school? I mean, did you have like certain proper clothing you had to wear?
Oh yes, we couldn't wear pants or slacks. That was just absolutely a no-no. In fact, it was a no-no for a while over at McNary because of the principal. And
Okay.
it was a while before they finally loosened up the restrictions on that, and the kids could wear.
Yeah, I remember those days, no
Yeah,
pants.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but the clothing was. I was like. I think I know I wore a lot of skirts and sweaters. My mother made my skirts, and I had a lot of pleated skirts, and I loved them. I still do.
Yeah, yeah, nothing
And
wrong with
so
that.
it was kind of like blouses and sweaters and
Yes,
and,
as long as it was nice and
yeah,
proper.
and saddle shoes with white anklets.
Oh, white anklets, oh my gosh. Now, were there any lakes or parks around that don't exist anymore that you used to play at? Things that we might have forgotten about over the years?
No, I know one that didn't exist then, and that was Stats Lake.
Oh,
Because
okay.
Stats Lake was the gravel pit.
Right, okay.
And it was just simply a great big hole there, and the company had long since abandoned it. And when I heard that the Stats family was getting ready to turn it into a lake, I thought, boy, I just can't believe that. How are they going to do that? But they did a good job of it.
They did a good
And
job.
it's been very fine. I lived over there for 10 years in the apartments.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice. Now, I don't want to date anything, but what mode of transportation was real popular back when you were a kid? Did you have typical old Packards and,
Oh,
the older?
my father always had Chevrolets.
Okay,
The old round-backed cars, then that was the type. We had city buses that came by, and where we moved out in South Salem, we had city buses that could go there. And kids all rode bikes.
yeah, growing up.
Kids didn't
it's-
have cars then.
Right, sure, yeah, that just wasn't the normal thing. Were the roads, like River Road, was it well paved back
River
then?
Road was a nice road. It was paved. It was a 2-lane road.
Okay.
And it went on and went out a long ways. I can't remember now how far. And also Wheatland Road went out. And the reason I know about it was because I rode my bicycle out to pick hops.
Oh, okay, sure.
And so I don't remember how far it was paved. I know that the hop field was down on one of the flats, and so we always cut off and went down through there.
Right, yeah, there used to
But,
be, a Suicide Hill, I think they
Yeah,
called it,
something
that
like
went
that.
down there
Yeah,
to the,
yeah.
So, what, we know you taught.
Yes.
And you've taught how many years total?
31.
31 years, and
Mm-hmm.
you got to retire when?
Oh, when I wanted to.
That's good, that's a good answer right there, that's always a nice answer.
Well, I had something else in mind to do, and
Oh,
so
did you?
so I retired and I did the something else.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It's nice to have choices like that. when
Well,
you
I
retire.
made my choice. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go on with the stress of teaching because it was really getting to my health, and my doctor had told me I needed to get out because I was getting too stressed.
Oh, okay.
So I got my securities license, and I went to work for a national company that sold retirement plans. And
Oh,
it was
okay.
it was the ideal job.
Oh, was it?
I had everything. They gave me my computer, they gave me a printer,
Oh
gave
my
me
gosh,
a
set you
car,
up.
or else they paid all my car expenses. I had a company credit card, and I was all over the place.
Oh,
They were
nice.
based in Washington D.C., and we went back once every couple of months to have meetings. And I was assisted by a man that came from Utah who did Eastern Washington. I did Western Washington and Alaska,
Oh, okay.
which was just delightful. I got to fly back and forth
how
all those
nice.
places, and I loved it. And
That's
I also
great.
went lots of places in the United States, too.
That's a nice way to kind of
Yeah,
start to
it
wind
was.
down your
Yeah.
career.
And the thing that amazed me was that I was the oldest person in the whole company.
Oh my gosh.
And I was afraid they wouldn't take me because of that.
Sure,
Because I had
sure.
applied for a number of jobs in Seattle, and their reply was, well, you're overqualified, which meant you're too old.
Yeah, you don't like hearing that one.
So I enjoyed this tremendously, and I learned a lot from it, and I got to be one of the top salespeople, and I won awards from them, and
nice.
and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and got lots of friends from that.
You had two great careers then.
I really did. I did
Yeah.
that for 14 years altogether.
That's just wonderful. What kind of changes in the landscape in Kaiser have you seen that you think is pretty drastic?
Well, of course, Kaiser doesn't look anything like it did when I moved out here. There was a little grocery store on the corner of River Road and Chemawa on the southwest corner.
Okay.
The school was over there, but it wasn't the school that we saw. It wasn't this one. This
Right.
one no, it hadn't been moved yet, but they were going to. But they had a different school there that was built
Okay.
kind of around the old one. And then they took that away, and then they tore down the one that was the kind of the substitute school. And then Roths came.
Yeah.
And things began to grow. We start, bit by bit, the businesses really sprang up, and they had, because people were moving out here, they had business. They had people to do business with, and so that's why people in Kaiser have tried to protect their people as much as they can, because of what they were proposing for the Kaiser station.
Oh, sure,
And
sure.
so far, I think the Kaiser people have won out, and so.
Yeah, well, good for them in that case, huh? What about, you said that you were here in the 1964 flood. And how do you guys react to that? I mean, because that was quite a doozy. I remember that.
Since we were out here, when we moved out, we had floods every so often, and my folks built a house with a basement, and of course the
okay.
basement always filled up. Put the house on a little rise so that it never got inside the house, but it always filled the basement.
Right.
And people would come on down the road in a rowboat and say, everything fine? Everything was fine.
Oh,
Well, my
dear.
mother was greatly upset because everything was ruined down in the basement, and she's learned to put her canned goods in other places rather than down in the basement.
Downstairs where, by golly, it was going to get ruined.
Yeah.
Did you have any trouble getting around then during those
During the
periods?
flood, we didn't go anyplace.
Yeah, you just pretty much had to stay
Couldn't, huh?
put. Yeah. We lived here too in '64, so
Oh, boy.
I
Oh,
remember that
boy.
quite well. Were there any prominent businesses that maybe were destroyed by the flood or by fire or
Oh,
that?
I don't think so, really. I don't recall any of those. Remember that when I was teaching in South Salem, I didn't know a lot of the things that were going on out here. And then when I was out here, my nose was to the grindstone all the time, so I still didn't know what was going on.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. How about the political atmosphere? Did you get to see any big political people? Did they come to Kaiser area?
Yes. When we first moved out here, I went and joined the little Kaiser community band that we had, and it wasn't very big, it wasn't very good. But a very important person came to visit us, and his name was Charles McNary.
Oh, okay.
And I have a picture of myself standing beside him with my cymbals from the band, I was doing that. And he came out he was on his campaign for president.
Oh, okay.
And so he came out and we had a meeting with him down there where was his home, and it's
Okay.
now the McNary Club. And we had a nice visit with him, and he was a nice man. I just
great.
thought that was great.
That's great. Yeah, there's been a few political bigwigs that have come through
Yeah.
this city. It's been kind of amazing. I remember seeing Richard Nixon at
Yeah,
McNary one
yeah.
time.
Richard Nixon came and sat through one of our musical
Oh
performances.
my gosh. Now, if you had a picture with him, that'd be great.
I don't think we did because I didn't know he was coming, and this
Yeah.
was a surprise. And I don't know that he stayed the whole time, but
Probably
but
not.
he enjoyed the program apparently, and the kids still remember him. So.
Oh, of course. That's a big thing. Now, during our tough times in life, like the Depression and World War II and things like that, did you see an impact on our community?
Well, I wasn't out here in the Depression
Sure, 'cause
time.
you didn't
We
come
were in
in.
Salem then, and I noticed the effect on my folks. My dad was frantically trying to get the business going, and I was having some problems with it. And I can remember one day he came into the house and sat down, and he talked to my mother. First, he just looked at her, and he said, "You know what? I think we're going to have to cut back to 2 meals a day."
Oh,
And my mother said, "Well, if we must, we must." And we did.
yeah.
But we got along fine.
Yeah, well-
Mother always planted a garden, and she always had vegetables from there, and she canned vegetables. And so we did buy our meat, our beef, but we had uncles and cousins who went deer hunting every year and always brought back enough venison to share, you
Oh,
know.
that's nice, yeah.
And my father liked to salmon fish, and so we had fish occasionally.
Oh,
So
nice.
it wasn't really all that hard on us.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good.
At least I wasn't aware of it.
Now, how about some fun things in life, like parades and festivals? Were you ever a part of?
Yes, yes. In fact, I have a picture of that too. The picture of the Highlanders. The Kaiser Fire Department built the float for them, and the Highlanders got to be in the Portland Rose Parade.
Oh, wow. What
And
year
they-
was that? Do you remember?
I don't remember the year specifically, but it was about maybe 1973.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember
okay.
for sure.
Yeah, but somewhere around there.
Something like that.
Oh, how nice.
And so, because my middle name is Rose, it was Betty White, I think, who was one of the commentators, and she said, "Well, wasn't that nice? They found somebody who has a name of Rose and is in the Rose Parade."
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. Well, that's good. So did your float win an award or anything?
I don't remember that it did, and I don't
yeah.
think that it wasn't that fancy, but it was adequate, and it was
Yeah.
pretty, and the kids were all dressed in their uniform, and the girls wore these royal blue velvet gowns with the long white gloves, and the boys had their white jackets and the tux pants.
Oh,
They
nice.
were a handsome group.
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. Now, we know that Kaiser now has a ton of grocery stores. Mm-hmm. Were there grocery stores all over the place back then?
Not the one on the lot over on the corner, the one that was there. That was the main one.
That was it.
All the way through the war, World War II. There wasn't anything else that came in. Then it was after that. Then things began to build.
Build up,
But
okay.
it took something like that.
Yeah, because now we have a ton of them. It's like wherever your
yeah.
choice is.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember when Kaiser was incorporated? You remember how big of a deal it might have been when we decided it was time to become our own city?
Well, yes, I do. But we were always in favor of it. We thought that would be a real asset for the community. So we voted for it and
Right.
thought it was a good thing to have.
Yeah, I think it's been nice for Kaiser
Yeah,
to,
I think it
to
has.
come out onto its own and grow
Yeah.
like it has. Back then, of course, religions always played a part in society. Were there a lot of churches available for people?
Well, the Catholic Church, the Faith Lutheran, and I don't remember too many others really, and there were some around, smaller denominations that
Yeah.
I don't remember. But again, after the war, things began to blossom.
Yeah, everything just kind of bloomed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there anything like funny stories you have about Kaiser that you can think of? That's something that maybe we just don't think of about anymore? Anything comical happen or?
I can't think of anything particularly.
Well, that's okay. I
No,
just
I
was
thought
wondering-
I didn't think of anything like that. Of course, people weren't quite so apt to pull tricks and jokes and stunts
Sure.
and things like that right then. I could tell you something about what happened when I was in Alaska one time that was the funniest thing ever.
I don't know. Those Alaskan stories can be kind of, I don't know. I've heard they're kind of funny. Now, we can't go anywhere else without talking about the Highlanders.
That's right.
That is a huge deal to you.
Yes.
And I know it was your baby.
Yes.
And still is.
Yes.
Because the 50th anniversary of McNary's coming up. So
Yes.
I think, May 17th, I think, is when
May
they...
17th is
Yeah.
the concert.
So tell us a little bit about the Highlanders.
Well, when I first started teaching, I was very fond of listening to the Manhattan Transfer. And I loved the music, I loved the way they sang, the way they sounded, and I thought, gee, I'm going to get me a small group here to try to do some of that. And we did. We sang some of the things like the Manhattan Transfer did. And then we got into some little jazzier things, and we began to have fun with that too. And we did so well, the kids did so well, that before he was elected governor, Tom McCall heard us sing it. That's something that he was attending. And he came over to me and he said, "Oh, I like to hear your kids sing." He said, "You know, I'm running for governor." And I said, "Yes, I know." Well, he said, "If I get elected," he says, "at Christmas time, I want you to come in and sing at the Capitol building."
Oh, how nice.
And nobody had ever done that before.
Oh.
So came Christmas, and we went in and we sang at the Capitol building, and everybody loved it. And we were the first school in Salem to do that. We started that
Oh.
practice too.
Yeah, and that continues today.
Oh yeah, and our people are almost fighting to get a place now.
That's what I've heard.
So
yeah.
we sang for them every year that I was teaching here, and
Okay.
and when McCall was going out of office, the last time he came down and gave me a big kiss on the cheek,
Oh.
and there wasn't anybody to take a picture. I was sorry about that.
Shoot. That's too bad.
But the kids got a big kick out of it.
Now, how big of a group was the Highlanders?
Well, the Highlanders usually had them for about, well, of course, it depended on the kind of voices I had available. But the average was about 16,
Okay.
and 8 of each, a boy and girl.
Oh, okay.
So they were duos. And because we were doing so well and doing so many places around here, I got to thinking, it'd be nice if we could go to Hawaii and do a concert tour over there. Well, first I had to ask the school board,
Sure.
and they said, "Oh, well, you won't do it during school time." I said, "No, we'd go during spring vacation when there's no school." "Well, go for it." And so we did, and we had fundraisers. We licked gold bond stamps, and we collected pop cans and so forth. and we got to go to Hawaii. And we have a number of pictures about the first trip that we had there. Getting up on the plane, they made a big sign for us to go up on the plane. And,
Oh, nice.
And a lady in Portland, a nice travel agent, got us very good deals over there, and we were just delighted. And of course, we sang just everywhere.
Oh, okay.
We sang at the Roosevelt High School, which was right there, and their director then, and a few years later, brought his group over here,
Oh,
which
nice.
was great to have that come back.
Yeah.
But we sang for the military, we sang for the places where the tourists were, and we sang at the Arizona Memorial,
Oh, okay.
and that really got the kids.
Oh, I bet.
And we went to hospitals and sang for the wounded people in there, and the kids really got a lift out of that.
I bet they did.
Really
Bet
got a
they
lift.
did, yeah.
So that was a real thrill.
So like how long, the Highlanders are still going on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they still are called the Highlanders and.
Oh, I don't think they call it the Highlanders
They call it
anymore.
something-
Mr. Taylor has a second group from his choir that he calls his more elite group, and he calls them the Highlander group, and then he calls them the, oh dear, now I can't say the word, classics.
Oh, okay, okay.
So, but the Highlanders as such are not known anymore.
Oh, okay.
But I have a lot of them coming back, and I'll have to tell you about that pretty soon.
Yeah, I would love to hear about this reunion.
Oh, that's what's coming up. It really wasn't really intended to be a reunion, but it's turning out to be.
That's what it's, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
it sounds like.
When I saw 5 years ago that McNary was going to be celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2015, I thought, aha. Now, I've been retired for a good many years.
Yeah,
But I put out a notice to all my former students that I could reach and told them, would you be willing to come out and do a concert to celebrate the birthday of the high school? And they said, oh, yes, of course.
Oh, how nice.
I don't know just now how many will actually be able to be here, but I had 350 to 400 people sign up.
oh my gosh.
Now, the current choir is 100-some students.
Okay.
We can't put that many people, all of us, on the stage of the theater, so we're going to have to do it in the gym.
Oh, gotcha.
And you know what? I never did have a concert in the theater because we didn't have a theater at the time I was
Right,
there.
right.
And so we did our concerts in the gym. So we're looking forward to that. And that's coming up
Oh,
and going to
that'll
be
be
just
nice.
great.
Yes,
and
I'm
we're going to
looking
do
forward to that.
some group numbers. The McNary group will join with us, and we'll sing a number of good ones. And Jim Taylor wants to do the Hallelujah chorus, and I want to do And the Glory of the Lord, both from Messiah.
Oh,
And the
okay.
kids all said, oh, well, that would be great. And so we have a number of other things that we're going to do.
Oh,
And we'll
nice.
trade off in directing them.
Well, that'll be great. So you're part of the organization of
Yeah.
getting all this
Oh, you
together
bet.
then.
We're
Oh,
going
that's
to
great.
end up with the alma mater, which I wrote.
Oh, you did?
Our first year we were here, the man who was assistant principal then was a former college colleague of mine, and he was very gifted with words. So he wrote the words, and I wrote the music.
Oh,
and we will
great.
sing that.
Oh,
And
nice.
then we went on, because we were trying to think of something to do, something of interest, so we wrote a musical. We wrote a musical. It was just after Johnson had signed the law putting Medicare into
Oh, okay.
practice. And so we wrote a musical, and we called it It's a Lovely Day for Medicare.
Oh.
And it was set in the hospital with all the little jokes. And then he wrote the script, and I wrote the music. And it was just a lot of fun, and
Oh,
people loved
sounds
it.
like it.
So the next time, we wrote one that was a cowboy one. And it was called How the West Was Lost.
Oh,
And we put that on, and they just adored that. And the next one was Never Climb a Breadfruit Tree. That was after we'd gotten back from Hawaii. The next one was Lemon Flatbush. A lemon flatbush was, this lady lived in Flatbush, New York, the Flatbush area of New York City. And she couldn't keep a canary, so she put a lemon in her bird cage. And so it was the Lemon Flatbush. And then we did Up, Up, and Oasis, which was one from the Mideast.
sounds like you had a lot of fun coming up with this stuff.
And then the last one was Everybody's Gotta Be Somewhere.
Oh,
And we had a marvelous time with those.
oh, it sounds like it. So
Yeah.
you've had quite a career here in Kaiser.
Yes, I
quite
really
a life
have.
in
I really
Kaiser.
have.
Yeah, and do you have any special other memories you'd like to share?
Well, I was given the honor of being a distinguished alumnus of Willamette University. Mm-hmm. I was the first citizen of Kaiser.
That's right. I was hoping you were going to bring that up.
I was thunderstruck because the lady, Mrs. Boucher, asked me if the Highlanders would sing. Well, some of them had other things they had to do that night, so I said, I'm sorry, we just can't. So she said, well, you are be sure to get your husband there. I said, oh. She said, well, I think they're going to give him the First Citizen Award. And I said, oh, that would just be wonderful. And so I very carefully, in a very blasé manner, got him to, oh, he said, I don't think I want to go to that. Yeah, you want to go to that. Come on, let's go. So we went there. And then when they announced that it was me, I could have fainted right there.
Oh, dear, how fun.
And he didn't know it either, so he was surprised too.
Oh,
So-
my gosh, he wasn't even in on it. Oh, boy.
Yeah, it was fun. It really
Oh, how
was.
exciting is that?
Yeah, it
That's
was.
really great. Well, it sounds like you have contributed a lot to the city of Kaiser.
Well, I've lived here long enough to feel like I'm a native. I'm not. I wasn't born here. Didn't
but-
move here permanently until I was 13, as I said.
Yeah.
But, and I have been away for a number of years. When I was doing my work with the companies selling retirement programs.
Mm-hmm.
But then I came back, about 14 years ago because my son said he needed to have somebody help babysit his two sons.
Oh, there
'Cause
you go.
His wife was working and he said, you know, your mother took care of us. And he says, you need to take care of my boys. And so I did.
There you go. Good grandmother.
So,
But it sounds like, though, you enjoyed your time here.
oh,
and-
very much so.
Yeah, it's a wonderful city.
Yes, it
We
is.
were
Yes, it is.
very
I
happy
feel
to have-
very connected to it.
Yeah, it's one thing, living here, you do feel connected. It's a small enough city where you
Yes.
just feel like you're a part of it.
Yes.
Well, thank you so very much for being here with us.
Very welcome.
And I just enjoy your stories, and I would love to have hours of just listening to you because I know you have stories to tell. But I think that'll wrap it up for today. And thanks again, Mrs. Alice Jones. Thank you for being here.
You're more than welcome. I have enjoyed myself tremendously.
Thank you.